So I'm Taylor. um, when did I go to Laurier? 2009? 2010? Yeah, I was at Laurier a long time ago. I basically, as a bit of backstory, I was a basketball player my whole life. From the time I was, I think, in 5th grade until I ended up getting recruited by Laurier, went to Laurier, and I had been injured around the time of training camp in the year prior, and so I was sort of deciding whether or not I wanted to continue playing basketball. That was my biggest motivation for being here at all, was to play. And I got severely injured in training camp, had to basically take the year off. I talked to the coach at the time, who was Peter Campbell, and said, I need the year off. I'll try to come back next year after I've rehabbed. And so I just committed fully to school. I was in kinesiology, and I was really kind of geeking out on training science at the time, training athletes, and I thought maybe I'd run a gym, maybe I'd train basketball players. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And so I'm going to every class, I'm studying, I'm waking up early, doing homework. I'm getting, I don't know, good grades for me at the time, like 85 or something like that. And there was this one night, I think in November, I was in my dorm room at Bricker on my laptop, and it's like 10 p.m. at night, and I stumble across this article on building digital businesses. And back then, like, Instagram, I don't think, was a thing at the time. Facebook was relatively new. Twitter was relatively new. Online business was like if I walked out of my room and mentioned that to my friends, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. It wasn't done. But I, by like some freak accident, stumble upon this article, and the next thing you know, the sun's coming up, and I've been up all night, like down the rabbit hole of how to build an online business. And I realized basically that the skills and the knowledge that I had learned growing up, training myself for basketball and training a few players personally as well, could be built into an online course. And so at the time, there's, again, like no course platforms. There's out-of-the-box solutions now that are amazing, but I ended up paying some guy like $5,000 to build this really janky website. Completely stopped going to class. Had somebody else, a friend of mine, doing my labs for me, didn't go to the exam, like completely checked out, and was all in on launching this course. And so from November until August, that's all I did. I was like in our student house basement, which I think was infested with mold, with my mattress on the floor and a desk right beside it. And I was just working all day figuring out how to do this. And we launched in August. It did $80,000 in 3 days. And I hadn't made any money really up until that point in my life. I'd like reffed a few men's league games for $25 an hour or whatever. But to me, that was a crazy, crazy thing. And next thing you know, I had a business. And we launched another program a few months later, and another program a few months later. And it kind of scaled from there. Over the years, it's changed a lot. We can get into that as time goes. It's been 12 years now, which is crazy. I just realized that before we started speaking, that it's been a long time. And there's been a lot of iterations in the business. It's changed a lot as the online space has changed. And so I guess I'm basically here to just answer any questions that you guys have and try to be a guide as best I can.
Can you describe how it has changed? Because where you are now is very different from where you started.
Yeah, where I'm now is different, and it's also very similar. It's very similar. And so for whatever reason, luck or just circumstance, we became really successful really quickly when it was just me. And it was just me on camera. That first course that I launched, it was about shooting. I was a shooter in basketball. It was my specialty. And so I built this shooting training program. And it's funny because one of our old players who's been with us for 12 years and now he's graduated, he's no longer playing basketball, but I'm still in communication with him. He reached out to me a few days ago and he's like, out of all the programs that you guys have launched, that's my favorite one, that first one. And it's funny because There was no production whatsoever. Like a friend of mine, his little brother was suspended from school. And so as punishment, we brought him to the gym with us, paid like a small fee to be able to use the gym for a short time, and ended up staying there from like open till close for an entire weekend. Filmed everything on a flip cam because our phones didn't have cameras or good cameras back then. And I edited the whole thing on iMovie myself and then put it up on this janky website, and we launched it. So that was the first program ever, and it was just me. Again, like I had somebody building the website, I had a contractor doing graphic design, I was doing all the video editing, I was figuring out how to do marketing. But again, like I said, super simple. It was me, an online course, and our primary way of advertising at the time was on Google AdWords. And so there was, later on I hired an agency to run Google AdWords, and they'd run ads to a landing page, we'd capture an email in exchange for a free workout. And then I had this course that I offered them. And all I would do is send a daily email. I'd write this daily email newsletter with stories and techniques and advice of different kinds. And I wrote one of these emails a day for like 5 years. And kids, kind of like a daily radio show or something, they'd get hooked on it. And that was kind of all I did. For a number of years, all I did was travel, write an email a day, answer a few of my own like personal emails and check out. And that was it. Just make sure nothing broke. And the business did amazing when I was doing almost nothing. And I remember I was in Rio de Janeiro for Carnival in like 2014, partying for a week. And I was actually nervous because the business was doing so well. And it didn't make sense to me. Why? I'm not doing anything, but it's doing better than ever. Why is that? And so the mistake I made, and sort of the biggest iteration up until that point, was that I went home, got like severe entrepreneurial ADHD, and tried to change everything. And I brought in a business partner. I brought in a whole bunch of coaches and trainers who worked with a lot of like big name professional players, and built this big infrastructure. We had a full-time lead developer and contractors, and a team of I think like 15 people plus our coaches. We were on a big camp every year. We had a line of like 20 different programs that were all housed in this app, and memberships and this and that, coaching, and it got really big and really disjointed and dysfunctional really quickly. And suddenly there's no profit left at the end. And I, through that, learned this really critical lesson for me. And this, of course, doesn't go for everybody. Some people might be really suited for that. But for me personally, I just do not want to run a big, complicated company. And so now it's kind of come full circle to where I'm the only coach. I'm the only one that anybody sees on camera. And I teach different material now, which I can get into, but it has come full circle in the sense that it's a very simple business, and it doesn't involve me doing anything that I don't want to do. Back then it was just, I wrote a daily email, everybody else did everything else, and that was it. And I stuck to what I was good at and what I enjoyed. And now it's not a daily email. I film them on camera, but that's kind of all I do. And so I can focus all of my attention just on the quality of the teaching, and I have contractors, employees doing everything else. It's a small team, but nevertheless, it's much simpler than it was. So it kind of went through this phase of like really simple bootstrapping, running really well, freaked out because I didn't understand why I was making more money when I worked less. So I worked way more, broke everything, made way less, lost a whole bunch of money, and then rebuilt it simple again. So we've come full circle 12 years later. And there's a lot of open space I didn't cover in there, but we can fill in the gaps. Yeah, it's a different business.
Can you explain that transition?
Yeah, so obviously in high school, I was a basketball player. It was my whole life. It's all I thought about. after I stopped playing, I built the business, and I was still sort of into basketball, but not as much. And very quickly, the passion, frankly, for basketball training itself over the first few years was essentially gone. Like I didn't care about it at all. And I cared about our players. I cared about how well they did. I liked seeing their progress. I liked working with them. But to actually talk about like jump shooting form and drills, and it was just not my thing anymore. And so I was searching for a way to and this was a long process, I think from 2013-ish until 2020. I was searching for a way to kind of realign myself with the business, so I was actually teaching and producing something that I was deeply passionate about. And basketball just wasn't that for the longest time. And so in 2019, this was sort of, again, this is a long story arc, and I'm leaving out a lot of things, but at that time, I decided that, okay, I don't want to run this business forever. I want to scale it, sell it, and be done. And so I start building a team and operating procedures and various things that are needed to sell a business. Didn't like doing any of it, was stressed all the time. Was working with basketball trainers, which are not always the easiest bunch. And it basically collapsed. Like everything broke all at once, and I had no idea what was going on. I was super stressed out. We had employees that were clocking in but not actually working, all of this infighting within team members. It was so dysfunctional, and it was all because my heart wasn't in it. And I had one eye off the ball, wondering what am I going to do next. And so it's sort of at the peak of this dysfunction, and I ended up going on a pretty significant meditation retreat in, I think it was February of 2020. I fly out to this retreat, and it's quite a long retreat, but for some reason on the way there, it was it sounds funny, but it was like something whispered in my ear, DeepGame. And I had been doing for myself personally, my obsession was in the realm of the mind and working with meditation and spiritual practice and various techniques in that world. And I'd traveled all over the world, studying with teachers for 5 years up until that point, and kind of pouring all of myself into that. And so as I'm flying out to this retreat, this idea, DeepGame, and it was a course for essentially teaching basketball players how to work with the mind to improve performance. And it was like a revelation for me. And so that entire retreat, I frankly wasn't meditating very well because my mind was just pouring inspiration. And I ended up sort of creating this framework for the way that I see the part of basketball that's played with the mind and the rules of that game and how it actually works fundamentally. And so by that point, nobody could have paid me to continue doing the basketball thing for a second longer. I was you can pay me $10 million a year from now. I'm not working for another year. I'm done. And immediately flew home after the retreat, wrapped up the business, launched DeepGame, and it's been a godsend. It's the most enjoyable work I've ever done in my life, and it's because I'm much more just personally aligned with it.
Hey, it's Taylor. I hope you enjoyed today's talk. And if you did, the best thing to do right now while it's fresh in your mind is head over to deepgame.com and join us in our free masterclass where you'll learn all of the fundamental principles of the part of basketball that's played with the mind. We've had players call this the best hour of basketball learning of their lives, and it's completely free right now. So head over to deepgame.com, join us. Once again, it's totally free, and I will see you there.